inside the off stump. Oh, he's caught it! I don't believe it! Tom Kohler-Cadmore has caught the most magnificent catch. At short third man, it's the end of Daniel Sams, and Somerset have won the Vitality Blast 2023. They've bowled Essex out for 131.
Hello there, you're listening to Always Look on the Bright... You're fucking watching it now, aren't you? Hello there, this is Always Look on the Bright Side of Life, the Somerset Cricket Podcast. My name's Ian Shepherd. Joining me this evening, I've got President of the club, Sir Peter Wanless. Peter, mixed fortunes for Somerset this week. 2 wins for the men in the Blast, 2 losses for the women in the Blast.
Yeah, that's great cricket, and it's lovely to see the Blast back, and I've enjoyed both days, yeah.
Good stuff. Dan Kingdom's also with us. Dan, no more super overs in professional cricket this week that you haven't witnessed, so your record is still intact.
It is indeed, yeah. Although I was glad to add another maiden to the maidens list almost straight away in the first game. So that was good fun. Yeah, it's been a good few games, good couple of games so far.
And also with us is Somerset CCC's head of digital and also my travelling companion back from Chelmsford on Sunday night, Ben Warren. Ben, should have just recorded the audio from the dash cam on our long chat on the way home, and we could have put forth a 5-hour bumper podcast for the listeners to listen to. Always a sweet journey home with those points in the bag.
It was great, yeah. We could have done a few podcasts there, couldn't we, now? Back to Chelmsford, but yeah, what a good day it was.
Great stuff. Right, shall we start at the proverbial beginning then? First ever men's and women's professional Blast double header at Taunton on Friday. Women not getting off to a great start. Well, they did get off to a great start with Bex Odgers and Emily Monday putting on about 40 for the first wicket in 4 overs, but then they kind of just capitulated. And then Paige Schofield and Danny White-Hodge got together, 2 experienced internationals, and just really saw them home. Not much else we could have done with that, really. Bit of inexperience in both the batting and the bowling, Dan. Yeah,
I mean, from what I saw, you know, the batting just needs a bit more sort of structure. I mean, the head coach Trevor Griffin mentioned the clarity in the top 3. I would like to see Luff or Wilson batting at 3 or maybe even opening. I think starting with those 3 youngsters at the top is perhaps just giving us, we have had a decent start. You know, in the first game against Surrey, we reached 39 in 3.5 overs, which is a good start. But I'd like to see the experienced players, at least one of the experienced players, really dictating from the start of the innings, rather than perhaps leaving it up to the younger players. And then in both games, the experienced players, Wilson and Luff, have had to come in and sort of put out the fire a little bit in terms of the top order. So I'd just like to see the experience spread out a bit more and the youngsters spread out a bit more through the order. Because, you know, we've got plenty of talent in the team, and Bex Odgers has looked really good so far, particularly in T20. She obviously has the ability to go hard from the start of the innings, which is great. But yeah, we need Wilson and Luff to score runs consistently, and I don't want to put too much burden on them. But you know, if we are going to go through in this competition, I think a lot does rest on their shoulders.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think as well up at Chelmsford, possibly a little bit naive with a lot of shot selection out there. There was a big boundary at Chelmsford. We'll get onto it later, but we'll quickly talk about it now. There was 3 out, big boundary at Chelmsford, and the leg spin was on, and they kept trying to hit boundaries. They kept playing these maximum effort slog sweeps, which are only ever going to get them 1. When, you know, a bit of game management, a bit of nous would have been just drop it and push for that 2. Maybe get a mistake, because if your big shot's only ever going to get you 1, and they were sort of trying to hit boundaries. Anyway, so on to the men then. We always like it when Surrey arrive. Tom Curran, Nando's in hand. What a day it was. Lewis Gregory wins the toss and unsurprisingly opts to field first. And, well, apart from Jason Roy, they were absolutely terrible. I mean, they were facing some pretty decent opening bowlers in Matt Henry and Craig Overton with Riley Meredith as backup. But What did they get in the power play? They were, I think it was about, I wrote it down somewhere, but it's on a different sheet of paper. I think it was only about 30 odd in the power play. Ollie Pope looked like he couldn't hit it off the square. He didn't look like an international batter by any stretch of the imagination. And it was just up to a fantastic knock from Jason Roy, 92 out of 146 for 9. Without him and Sam Curran, the rest of the batters made 32 between them. No, 28, sorry. Because I didn't take off the 4 extras. I mean, that was a pretty special performance, Peter. I mean, just to beat Surrey like that on your home patch, don't get any better than that.
Yeah, I mean, our bowling attack looks fabulous, doesn't it, on paper, and they delivered, and they keep coming at you. So the positive is, and this is how we won it 2 years ago, was taking lots of wickets, and so that's something to be really kind of confident and pleased about, I think. The Surrey guests who I was entertaining, always a pleasure to entertain them when we win. They were surprised that Ollie Pope opened and couldn't understand why he was sort of scratching around for quite so long. I mean, you might have thought that would be the role that Sibley would play, but actually Sibley, well, he didn't really sort of come off, but it was Pope that chewed up a lot of the strike, and from then on they were always behind it, weren't they? And they did what they usually do against us. They just hit it up in the air, and we took lots of catches.
Yeah, every one of those was a catch, apart from Riley Meredith bowling down Worrell at the end of the innings. I mean, Ben, I imagine a lot of interest on the stream Friday night. Everything going Somerset's way. What was your thoughts on Friday night?
Yeah, excellent performance on Friday. I think it set the tone. I think in the end it was a very very comfortable win, really. I think on Friday, I think they the bowling attack, as Peter mentioned, is just when they have Meredith and Henry, is a very 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 strong bowling attack. And I think the one question I'm sure we'll come on to him a little bit more about is Lewis Goldsworthy. He's a sort of a new face in that attack, and he didn't really even get put under much pressure, although his first ball did go somewhere near Morrison. He didn't really get a chance to take on a sort of a new spinner. So yeah, really really great bowling display, which set up in the end a fairly. I know we lost a few wickets, but I think we're always going to get home at some point in that one case.
Yeah, Gregory and young Thomas Rew, which we'll come on to in a minute, just sort of gave it away a little bit towards the end, possibly just trying to get it done as quickly as possible, because you never know when that little fraction of a decimal of net run rate is going to come into play towards the end of the competition. I get the feeling we are going to be having a lot of chats about Somerset winning the toss, bowling really well, restricting the opposition to 150, and then knocking it off without any real dramas, because that seems to be the modus operandi. It's what we tried to do last year. It's what we do in this year. It's what we did in 2023. I'm really optimistic. I think we look stronger than we did in 2023. Had Riley Meredith into effectively 2023's seam bowling attack, Dan, and it looks pretty damn good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, last year we lost a bit of that aura. We lost a bit of that wicket-taking ability. We weren't quite as good as sort of taking wickets, particularly up top. But this year we seem to have got that back again. And I think, having that combination of both Henry and Riley, as well as obviously Craig, is perfect. And to do it against two pretty, Surrey obviously topped the group last year, and Essex didn't have quite as good as the season last year, but they're two pretty strong T20 sides, and to bowl, to restrict them to less than 150 in both matches, it was, unbelievable, really. So, long may it continue. I think Hove will be more of a test. So, but if we can keep that going, that would be ideal. Obviously, there will be times where we have to bat first, which is fine. But we've got to be challenged in every way possible in order to become the best side that we can be. So looking forward to it, because we looked really good so far. But it's early days, so let's not get too ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, definitely early days, but you can't do much better than 2 wins out of 2. Should we talk about young Thomas Rew? There were rumours circling around the county ground during the women's game and a little bit before that young Thomas was going to be given his spurs and handed a first 11 debut, and it did come to pass. He came in at number 5. Maybe a little bit of an over-enthusiastic shot trying to hit Yusuf Majid into St James's Church. But were you surprised to see him take the field? I know I was. I was pleasantly surprised. You know, I thought maybe Lammonby would have been given the go, maybe Umeed ahead of him, but it's an extraordinary show of faith to play him ahead of, and I think I'm going to get my numbers right, 4 contracted batters. Finn Hill, Andy Umeed, Archie Vaughan and Tom Lammonby, and also Josh Thomas, so 5. So that's a real pat on the back and a boost from the selectors and the management, and a surprising one too for me, but pleasantly surprised. Did you have a with it, Mr. President?
I mean, he's held in such high regard, and there's such temptation to get him in fast, and he's always the example that everyone chatting around the club says, you know, if you're good enough, you're old enough, and so I was surprised because I thought that Lammonby would play ahead of him, and it was great to see Lammers playing on Sunday and playing so well. So we've got the best of both worlds now, from my point of view, with both of them in the team. But it was good to see, and he can only gain from the experience, can't he? And why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty faultless display in the field as well. Took a catch. Just would have been the icing on the cake if he was able just to get a nice little red inker and see us home. But I've got a feeling we will be seeing a lot more from him in the future. And we only had to wait 2 days. Anything more on Surrey before we move across to East Anglia and start? Is it East Anglia? Is it classed as East Anglia?
Kind of.
East.
Almost.
Over there, anyway.
I would just say this was a massive test for the club, because this was a double header. We had 4 professional teams in the ground. It was a complete sellout, and it was a complete sellout beyond previous assumptions about how many tickets you can sell for the night. And so far as I could tell, everyone had a great time, and it mightn't have been a surprise if there'd been 1 or 2 teething problems, but well done, Ben, and everyone involved with the club, because that is not an easy thing to pull off, and actually the new facilities came into their own as well. And when you compare what we have managed to create with what Essex had on the Sunday, where the women were basically told, you got 20 minutes to get out of the changing room because the men are coming in. This is it's all progress, and so I felt very kind of pleased and proud of everyone involved in putting on such a good show, and to have such a big game, as I say, on your first night. It'd almost been easier to have not quite such a busy full-on occasion, but that gives us a great platform to work from, and hopefully we can sell lots of tickets, fill the ground and build from there in the weeks ahead. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I was did quite a bit of walking around the ground, and everything would seem to be going off without a hitch. I didn't see any bad behaviour or any major flashpoints or anything like that. So it was, as you say, well done everybody. Oh, very good. Dan, I mean, they kept you in check. You and Matt weren't getting too rowdy come the end. Giving Mr. Curran a send-off.
Yeah, no, I mean, Tom Curran did field in front of us for a little bit, but I held back just about saying anything.
Oh, that moment when Sykes misfielded it in front of the Somerset stand.
Lad.
I mean, I did feel for him, but again, I wouldn't like to be an away player coming to Somerset on a Friday night in front of that. We created a real kind of appropriately aggressive cauldron atmosphere, I would say.
Very boisterous there, and long may it continue. Right, speaking of boisterous, then off to Chelmsford on Sunday afternoon, where it was pretty much a case of the same again for Somerset women, who were pretty outplayed, really. Essex women made 149 for 7. Somerset really never got going. 84 all out, only Fran Wilson and Alex Griffiths getting into double figures there. Esmond McGregor at the pick of the bowlers with 4 for 8, which I suspect will remain her career best for quite a while. But then on to the men. And if we thought that Friday was good, after Simon Harmer won the toss and inexplicably decided that he wanted to defend at Chelmsford with a leg side boundary that would have been clearable by, the Chelmsford under 11s if they were going to play there. And also given our preference that we like to chase, it was a very strange decision. And quite a funny old game. It started off with Somerset again applying the quicksand during the power play. Again, that seems to be the modus operandi. Bowl, dry bowl, that back of a length, hard, heavy length that you really can't get on the back foot and try and pull, and it's not full enough to drive. Overton, Henry and Meredith to do that. And then Thomas Rew to take what was the best catch I've certainly ever seen in the flesh. I don't know about you three, but I was just absolutely gobsmacked by that one, and it is just such a shame that there isn't a quality or a high quality enough video of it so to do it justice, because it was an absolute worldie. If you haven't seen it, watch it and slow it right down, and you can just about see the pink shirt and the trousers in a blur, and you can kind of work out what he's doing. He had to jump so high to get that ball. If you think of the Max Waller one off AB de Villiers a couple of years ago, I watched that again because the two very similar sort of one-handed catches to a ball that's going for 6 very flat. Max hardly really got off the ground, and he's a really quite a tall guy as well, Max. He must be 6'1", 6'2". Thomas Rew keeps getting mistaken for Lewis Goldsworthy on the field, so he's no Joe Garner. The height and the hang time that he got to pluck that ball one-handed was just incredible. If you slow down the replay, and you'll be able to work it out by seeing that you can see the boundary rope and then you can't see the boundary rope, and working out how high he has to jump to sort of get out of that field of the boundary. It was just immense, and it was travelling as well, and just the reaction was incredible. Dan, I think you would have been the closest because I was under the 2-tier stand. Pete, you were in the.
I was completely the other side of the ground. Yeah.
Ben, you would have been in the press box, stuck and not able to see because the windows in the press box are fantastic. They're just normal UPVC windows, so that you haven't got like a whole field of vision of the ground. You keep having to sort of bob your head left and right so you're not looking at a pillar. But yeah, Dan, let's have your thoughts on it. It was just incredible.
Yeah, I had perfect view. Yeah, I mean, you've already described it pretty well, to be honest. I thought for all the world it was going over his head, and it was one of those where he takes it and it's just a total shock almost. You react with pure instinct, like, oh wow, like, oh my god, that's amazing. It's just one of those where it's just. Yeah, it like you said, it's one of the best catches I've ever seen. Obviously, up there with Max's Jamie Overton's against Middlesex, where he sort of stepped over the boundary and came back. To do that in only a second game as well was great, and it's hopefully a sign of things to come from young Thomas, because he's certainly got a lot of talent, and he'll show that with the bat soon, I'm sure, if he continues to get picked in this competition.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as well, he didn't get any runs in the first game. He didn't bat as it transpired up at Chelmsford. He wasn't needed with the bat, but good for him to kind of contribute and feel like part of the team. I'm sure he feels like part of the team anyway, but just to have everybody come over and sort of, big him up like, my God, that's one of the best catches that ever been taken in the history of the game. And he's now contributed, and he now feels a bit more like he's part of the dressing room. What was the reaction in the presidential suite then?
Well, we were a long way away from it, and I think I probably inappropriately shouted "What a catch!" But I do that pretty much every time we take a catch. And Lammonby's.
I think if you start dropping a few F-bombs and like pointing in people's faces, that's bordering on inappropriate. But I think what a catch is okay.
Yeah,
mind you, it is ethics. So if you did want to start a bit of a rumble in there, we'd all back you up.
But Lammonby took a brilliant catch a bit later on our side of the pitch, and I thought that was pretty spectacular and probably underappreciated how good Thomas Rew's catch it was. I mean, the vibe in our bit of the ground was conditioned to some extent by one Mr. Graham Gooch, who was very disappointed in the brainless nature of Essex's batting and didn't have much time for these guys who kind of appear for the blast competition, not having been seen previously in the season, hit it straight up in the air and kind of walk off. And he was muttering all the way through the first innings, 20s and 30s are no good to anybody. You need someone who can come in and hit a 70 or an 80. And then Will Smead, who also pitches up for us and hasn't been seen for a long time, does exactly that. So yeah, that was I think they were quite envious of the togetherness and the professionalism that our guys showed, which was lovely.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we can certainly sympathise with Gucci about being dissatisfied with the efforts of our batters. Although very nice to say, not in the last few weeks or so. Ben, I'm going to imagine it's going to haunt you to your retirement that you didn't send Will out with a camera pointed at Thomas Rew for the whole day to capture that catch in all its glory. But it does go to show how spoilt we are with the Somerset stream.
Well, I think the interesting thing was that Will was out there with a camera, but one of the stewards took offence, even though he had the correct accreditation, took offence to him. So it was in the time that he was trying to find a new camera position that he missed the catch.
Morning, guys.
So,
Evening, Shane.
How you doing? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we're good. We're just wrapping up on the Essex game, so we're just talking about that regulation catch that Thomas Rew took in front of the mid-wicket boundary.
Pretty rego for a 17-year-old.
I mean, what made it special for me is seeing the faces of all you guys sat in sort of, not the dugout, but the little stand in front of your dressing room, and the open mouths of, I think Josh Davey was kind of like, what is going on here? Because you see so many great catches now in cricket, like the one that Lammers took, the first one running off Ben Green, taking it, a couple of millimetres off the turf. That's kind of like a regulation catch these days. So to get that reaction from the pros, I think that shows what a special grab it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think a really important wicket too, because how dangerous Paul Walter can be in that, particularly in that format, getting to the short boundary. That's just a massive moment, and a even bigger moment for Thomas, who took a catch in the previous game, but it's great that he can take a worldie like he did. It just builds his confidence. So, the team prides himself on fielding, and great to see a young lad come in and kind of make those standards even higher, which is good.
Absolutely, yeah. And we were just saying as well that, he only sort of got one in the first game, and as it worked out, he didn't need to bat in the second game. But just to do something like that and get his teammates around him, patting him on the back that early in his career, kind of making him feel like a part of the squad after a couple of games is going to be, really, really good for his confidence as well.
Yeah, definitely. Every single player, there's always a moment where your teammates kind of accept you into the team. And it's always through performance, whether it's with bat or ball in hand, but also in the field. If you can earn the respect of your fellow teammates in the field, that always is a good sign. And like I said, Somerset pride themselves on fielding and raising the bar. So incredible moment for him.
Definitely. And we haven't talked about Ben Green as well. 3 wickets in and over. I don't understand how opposition batters haven't worked out Ben Green's modus operandi yet. They're hitting into the wind, the long boundary, and he picked up 3 wickets. I said to you, Ben, didn't I, before the game pretty much had even started, Ben Green's going to get a 3-foot and they're all going to be caught out there. And he did. It's just incredible. But that's really what started the collapse for Essex. 7 for 29 they lost in 5.3 overs. I mean, that was a 200, 190 pitch if I ever saw one with that one short side. So fantastic bowling effort. And then credit to the batting coach, Will Smead, fantastic, unbeaten 80 off of 54 balls. Tom Lammonby coming in to cover for Tom Banton, who was away with England, 36 off 22. And then Tom Abel remaining unbeaten for the second game, or third game in a row, actually, after Tom Kohler-Cadmore made a bright, breezy 15. It's quite nice, these run chases now. We just do not get flustered with run chases. It's fantastic. How many times is that all 5 of these 5 in a row victories have been chases, haven't they?
We're very good at opening partnerships in the blast, aren't we?
Yeah, without a doubt. Right, Ben's. I don't know whether I should be worried, Ben, that you're the one who keeps dropping in and dropping out. We're not going to see this on the stream anytime soon, are we?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm getting on with his app very well. It seems to be.
Yeah, do it on your desktop, mate. It's a lot easier. I think Gibbo had problems last week, so maybe you and him could pop along some IT classes together. Right. Anything more on Chelmsford then before we have a good old chat with Shane? I do need to confess this story. I think, earlier last season, we awarded Miguel Pretorius the brain fart of the year for his shot against Cameron Steele, and that was locked in. I think we could probably do the same for the sparkling cider moment of the year for Thomas Rew's catch, because it's going to take a lot to beat that, but maybe a certain trophy lift in late September may just do that. And I am nominating myself a Brain Fart of the Year award as well, after missing the turn in for the M4 on the way up. I was kind of driving all the way up, and that big industrial recycling thing on the right-hand side of the motorway just before you get to Gloucester, I sort of twigged that and I thought, oh, there's one like that just on the M5. And then it slowly dawned on me. So I had a lovely tour of the Cotswolds, making it down the A40 and the M40 before making my way just in time to catch the start of the women's game. So no harm, no foul. Right, welcome then officially to Shane Berger, Somerset's batting coach since, January 2023? Taken over from Lachlan Stevens after being head coach of the Scottish national team since January 2019, following a successful career playing and coaching in South Africa. Shane, thanks for your time. Welcome along to Always Look on the Bright Side of Life.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. It's actually great to be on the podcast. I'm a fan. I have listened to quite a few episodes. Good to see President Peter there, and Ben and Dan, who I thoroughly enjoy from a stats point of view. He's always got some fantastic stats to put on. I'm always reading them and trying to learn as much as I can off them. So no, it's really, really good to be here, and thank you for having me on.
No worries at all. Thanks for coming along. So really, I was going to sort of start kind of at the beginning with you. Well, maybe not at the beginning, but at the end of your playing career. What was it that kind of made you want to go into coaching rather than, say, the media or be a financial advisor like most of the Somerset players seem to want to do after they pack it in?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I guess coaching is not for the faint-hearted. You either love it or you don't. I think it certainly was inbred in me from a young age. I never quite realised, but I think looking back now and having the experiences I've had and coached the teams that I have and being in the environments and the different cultures, I probably take it all the way back to my childhood, really. I was surrounded by a teacher in my father, and also a coach. He was a tennis coach, and then my mother was a driving instructor. So I guess I was always surrounded by people who taught and always try to sort of impact other people's lives and try teaching the ways of the world. My dad was a massive influence on myself, and I didn't quite realize it at the time, but now I do. So his tennis coaching, which then evolved into a few other things, and then having a 14-year playing career. I guess whenever you come towards the back end of your career, you always become a glorified coach. We talk about senior players and leaders within teams. I was generally always one of those, really. And then at the back end of my career, I decided that coaching is what I really wanted to do, and that was going to be the next step for me. Probably happened a little bit earlier than I probably would have imagined. I was kind of forced to retire, which I think was a really good thing. Otherwise, I probably still would have been running in a bowling and batting. But so when the opportunity came up to take a team, to coach a team that I played in, that opportunity was too good to relinquish so soon. So I was very fortunate to get into the coaching world, and incredibly fortunate that I'm still in it. Absolutely love it, and to call it a job is probably a very lucky place to be.
Definitely. So how come, what were the sort of the circumstances that led you down to Taunton then?
So I'd been probably a head coach for about 7 years when I decided I wanted to get involved in county cricket. I was incredibly lucky to have the associate world and international cricket for 4 years with Scotland, which you mentioned earlier. Got to work with the likes of Somerset Josh Davey and Andrew Mead and one or two others. So I always wanted to dip my hand into county cricket at some point. And to be honest, I also was missing a red ball. We didn't play any multi-day format in Scotland, so got a lot of white ball cricket, and which was really good for my coaching and really sort of molded me as a coach. But the reason I decided to join Somerset really was just loved the history of the club, loved what the county had done in all my interactions with the county through Scotland. I was incredibly impressed with how Andy Hurry managed himself and the club, and it kind of just seemed like a really professional place to be. And then looking at the results that were achieved, I always felt it was a county that I wouldn't say overachieved in many ways, but always had this knack of just impacting and having a fan base that was really supportive. So that's where I wanted to be, and I wanted to be sort of jump out of the head coaching for a while, get into a skills-based coach structure for a while, and just really get down to enjoying coaching again. Not that I lost the love of coaching, but I think when you're a head coach, you get pulled into all sorts of different avenues, and when you're a skills-based coach, you can really focus on that particular lane. So that's why I decided to get into the county stuff, and just really pleased that Somerset were glad to have me.
Good stuff. So what's it like when you kind of come into a new environment then? Are you watching everyone's batting, trying to pick holes in their techniques kind of thing? Or have you kind of seen the players that you're going to be coaching beforehand, and have you already got a big sort of thick dossier, or do you just kind of play it by ear? How does it work?
I'm sure all coaches do it differently. I'm one that I like to gather information. I like to kind of figure out the character first up. I believe cricket is very much a game of life. It's because it takes so much time out your day, it very much means that character is important. So I love to figure out the character and try work out the character before I get down and try pretend to know everything about their batting. I think having been in the job now for 3 years, I can probably honestly say that I have far more knowledge and info on the players that I'm working with now than I did walking into the job, because it's very easy to get sort of preconceived ideas, and it's very easy to go down a path that probably you shouldn't go down too early. So some coaches can be really technical, some coaches just work really well in terms of the mentality and managing how the players go about scoring runs. I just believe I'm a bit of a hybrid really, but I try understand the character and the person before I really get down into the real batting side of things and get too technical. Look, don't get me wrong, technique's incredibly important, and it's required if you want to play at the very highest level of the game. But I think the mentality and the day-to-day ins and outs of dealing with county cricket and the pressures that come with that is far more important.
Is that what you would see your role as kind of during the season there? Did your role kind of shift after the 1st of April to kind of just making sure what you've done in the winter is applied throughout the summer, and the players are you're helping to keep them in the best mental state to perform at their best?
Definitely. I think it does shift, because once you get into competition time, it's really about trying to keep the player in the best space possible, trying to get them to be really fresh. They've hit a lot of balls in the winter, but then the other thing to bear in mind too is you wouldn't have worked with a lot of players in the winter, because the likes of a Tom Banton, a Tom Kohler-Cadmore, these guys would be touring the world playing in different competitions. So you don't always have the opportunity to work with them during the winter. But what you do have is the opportunity to work with a few others that are probably knocking on the door, some of them that have to work on various aspects of their game. So yeah, winter, a lot of technical focus coaching, working on the areas they really need to improve on, also making sure that you're touching up on their strengths and making sure that they are able to impact both red and white ball cricket games. We're also in the era now where players are choosing, which formats they want to be playing. But great to see someone like Will Smeed come out and want to play red ball cricket again, which, as we probably saw in the last game, really helped him to finish a game off and finish not out. And I truly believe that's down to him, really committing to a bit more red ball cricket. So there's a huge place for it still in the game. But from a role, my role is just understanding the character, knowing what to say when they need it, and how to ultimately get the best performance out of them from a batting point of view. But I'm also fortunate that having been a head coach, having been an all-rounder myself, I know the pressures of bowling, I understand the pressures of fielding, and all the the temperament required to go around with that. So I also feel I can kind of touch in all sort of aspects of the game. But that's without trying to step on Curbs' toes or Jace's toes or Tweds' toes. Just going in when you need to and making sure that everyone's in the best place possible to perform, and that's what it comes down to.
Great stuff. At the professional level then, how much would you say of what you do is led by you seeing something in the player that you kind of think needs fixing, and then how much would it be led by a player coming up to you saying, Shane, I think my trigger's off, or I think my hands are out of out of position, or something like that?
Yeah, I think again it comes down to I spoke about understanding the player. I think as you get to know them better, the players that you can approach with certain bits of information. But then you also understand the players that's probably not the right path to go down, and you kind of wait for them to come to you. So I think it's having that middle ground, that balancing act of what really is right for the player. Some of them are really open to wanting to chat, or actually all of them are really. But I understand it's more about when to intervene and what to say at the right time. And if things aren't quite going well, maybe forcing them to have a day off rather than hitting those extra balls that they feel might be the difference. That's just to use one example of what might happen. So I guess it comes down to trust. If you trust someone and they know your game and they're willing to spend time and understand and analyze your game and know what you really need, then that's a really good place to be. And I know that I've got the trust now of the players. They'll come to me when they feel they really need it. But when I do feel I need to go and have a chat, they're also pretty open to doing that. So that's what time gives you, and the knowledge of the players. But again, it's not an exact science. We don't get everything right. As a coach, we consistently learning, and that's one of the reasons I took the role on. One of the biggest challenges the club has is getting over the line in terms of the county championship, and that's something that was incredibly intriguing to me, to want to join a club that's never won the county championship, and to figure out why that might be, and to figure out what we need to do to ultimately get over the line and do that, which we've been pretty close in the last couple of years, but we just need to go out and do it now.
You mentioned there about gaining the trust of a player. What's the most important thing you can do as a coach to do that? And are they kind of good at sniffing out phonies, if you like, the players?
For me, the most important thing is that they just know that you care, and you generally want to see them do well and see them get better. And the other thing we also need to bear in mind is there's a lot of other really good coaches in the club that have a role to play in all of this. It doesn't mean to say that every single batting, whether they do well or whether they do poorly, is down to myself. There might be another coach in the system that is really giving incredible insight and helping that player because they have a really good personal relationship with them. Some of these players have walked a long journey with some of the coaches, and I think something Somerset prides himself on is the ability to produce players through the pathway, and that means you've walked a pretty long journey with some of those coaches. So, some of the best players in the world now still go back to some of the older coaches that they might have worked with, or someone that they really trust. And I guess that just comes down to someone that genuinely understands your game, knows what they need to do to get you in the best place possible to go out and score runs. So that's how I see it. That's how I see my role. And I think, I'll never really leave a stone left unturned trying to get the buy-in of a player. And I'm more than happy to also push myself aside, as I've mentioned previously, that if it's not me to get the best out of the player, I'm happy for it to be someone else.
Good stuff. What advice would you give to sort of a prospective coach looking to maybe get into the professional game? Because it seems to be, there seems to be kind of more and more. I mean, if you look at Trevor Griffin, the head coach of the Somerset Women, he's never played professional cricket. Andy Hurry is director of cricket. He's never played professional cricket. So there is a pathway. What do you think is? I know you come from the professional background, but what would you say to maybe a club coach? Maybe not Harry Everett. I dread to think what would happen if Harry made it onto the Somerset coaching staff. Joking, Harry, if you listed. But what advice would you give to a young coach wanting to make a full-time professional career out of it?
Yeah, my biggest advice would just be, if you're passionate enough and you want it badly enough, you'll stay in it for long enough. I think you've always, just when you think you want to give up, might be the right time that it's actually going to come to fruition for you as a coach, or even a player for that matter. Because you put in so much hard work, and you think something's not going to happen, or you think no one's taking notice, and then all of a sudden it just seems to happen, and that's the magic. That's the magic of coaching. And look, it doesn't always go in the direction that you think it might be. It also depends how you motivate it. I would say, to be a coach, you have to be very giving. It's not about yourself. It's not about getting the names and your name in the lights and getting all the plaudits. It's not what it's about. It's genuinely about the player doing well. And as I've mentioned a few times, I think gaining the trust of players and just being your authentic self is probably the best way to go about it. Just be a good character. And I think as a coach, you're always learning. If you can throw yourself into different environments, surround yourself with good people that you can keep learning from, that's where the magic happens. But more often than not, if a coach thinks he knows it all, or that ego creeps up, that's when the game has an incredible way of biting you and sorting you out in many ways. So yeah, any aspiring coaches, I would just say, you don't have to have played at the international level to be a good coach. There's many examples of very good coaches that haven't played at the highest level. And there's also examples of many good coaches who have played at the highest level, and they've had to go away and earn their stripes too. So there's many roads that lead to being a good coach. Just make sure that you stay on one, and you back yourself to stay on one for long enough.
I mean, speaking of coaches who have played at the highest level, Brendan McCullum has come in and completely revolutionised the England setup. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, being in a kind of a county coaching setup, which is looking to play almost a different sort of brand of cricket? It's played a brand of cricket that you have to be consistent for, what is it, 6 months of the season, whereas the England team kind of have to peak once every 2 weeks or so. Well, maybe not 2 weeks or so, but they come together. They got to peak for that little period, then they go away, and then they come back and they go away. How is that different to sort of what you guys are trying to do, and does it wind you up?
I think it's very transactional, isn't it? So when you're with an international team, or when you're working in a franchise, as I was very fortunate to do over December, it's quite, you get some of the world's best players coming in, thrown into one pool, and you get to manage them for a month or however long the series is. The difference is a county team. You have to build a culture. You have to build that trust and that and show that real care that I spoke about for a longer period of time. So I think the consistency in your relationship becomes more important, whereas at international level, which I've been fortunate to be in, it's a little bit more transactional, even though Scotland was probably more run like a county team than it was an international team. It's genuinely, it's also, we've got a few players that are now playing for England that are playing for Somerset, and I think about some of the messaging that might get sent to them that then gets sent down to the counties, and it's also managing that player's expectations. But we're fortunate where we've got the England batting coach that played for Somerset and is very much a Somerset man through and through, that's able to have good conversations with myself and many, many others, and keeps us on track. And we also have an insight into what they're looking for. So I think it's a really lucky place to be for us. But yeah, again, it's as a coach, it's about adapting to what environment you're in. But look, I haven't heard a bad word about Brendan McCullum. He sounds like an incredible character, someone who genuinely gets the best out of people, and you can see with how his teams play, they're excited to play cricket. And I think if you can get on the park and be happy and play the game that you love, that's ultimately why you started playing. So that's a pretty good place to be, even when you're getting paid the sort of money they are at the highest level, with the sort of pressure they have to deal with. So he sounds like an incredible coach to play for. And I guess as an England national team, we're lucky to have someone who thinks that way about the game.
Good stuff. I'm going to just fire in a couple of listeners' questions earlier. Jordan Rawls has asked, he says, kind of info, why do you think we seem to be a lot better in the second innings, in particular the run chases, than we do in the first innings? Do we sort of feel more kind of established in the game and a bit more comfortable, having just got been at the ground for a couple of days? It's something simple and psychological like that. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, we just my sarcastic answer is we just wheel the opposition into a little run chase that we know we can get in the last innings. But it's certainly not the case. It's look, I think first and foremost, it's probably shows the character of the team and the individuals that we have that we're now able to go and win games chasing, which is an incredibly tough thing to do. You know, many years ago, or even not so long ago, people have spoken about run chases being really tough to get on third and fourth day pitches. But we've done it really well, and it's an area we've looked to improve on. And again, it shows character, like I spoke about. Look, in the ideal world, you want to get big first inning scores, but the reality is we also want to play on wickets that allows us to get 20 wickets and win a game of cricket. So I guess it's always tough to get the balance right and the best of both worlds. But you know, I've been thoroughly impressed with how we've managed our last 4 or 5 performances chasing, and I think it's a pretty good place to be from a batting point of view when you're pretty confident that you can go out and chase anything. I feel last year the Warwickshire game at home was a really massive moment for us to go and build the belief and confidence that we could do that. And now we just have to build that same belief and confidence from a first innings point of view. And it's very easy to look into the technical side of things when guys are getting out in the first innings, and it's probably many of the listeners would think, oh, why are we not doing this? Why are we not talking about that? But there's a lot that gets spoken about, and there's a lot of stuff that gets looked into, and I guess not everyone's always privy to those conversations and able to see the sort of work that gets put in. But I can promise you it's not for a lack of work ethic, that's for sure.
Do you think it's anything to do with the sort of changing nature of the pitches? A lot of pitches these days seem to start off quite lively and then flatten out. Yeah,
definitely. You know, also this thing called the Duke's ball, which seems to always nip around. I wouldn't say it's anything new, but the wobble seam now that bowlers are bowling with. I know, you know, probably 5-10 years ago was more swing that would have done it for bowlers. But you look at Matt Henry, who's an absolute genius with it. He's able to get the ball to nip both ways, and I can tell you now, he probably wouldn't be able to tell you which way it's nipping. So if he doesn't know, the batters, it's very hard for a batter to know. So yeah, and one of the reasons I also wanted to get involved in county cricket was to almost come in and try, you know, solve this thing of the ball nipping around and the top order batters not being as successful as many people feel they should be in the country. You know, if an opener averages 30 now in county cricket, he or she's doing an incredible job, you know, because of the ball that's moving around. So yeah, it's one that not many would have an answer for as yet, but we're certainly trying to solve those things throughout the winters and summer months.
Neil, well, speaking about the opening of the bat, Neil has asked, who was involved in the conversations deciding to open with Josh Davey and Lewis Gregory? What were the thought processes / tactical decision-making processes? What were the key factors? Was it suggested by the players themselves or influenced by where you were playing / conditions, etc.?
Yeah, I guess the easiest way to answer that question, it's genuinely a collective conversation with a few of the leaders in the team. You know, to give Lewis credit, he was one that put his hand up and said he wanted to do it. We felt as a group that he was batting really well, or has been batting well for a long time right now. He's also not able to bowl, or he wasn't able to bowl, so he felt he could really provide the team with a point of difference and could still captain and play in the game. So I guess for me, the biggest thing is always the want to want to go in and open. That's half the battle won already. And then the other one with Josh, we just felt, you know, from a technique point of view, he's always showed incredible ability to hold a bat in his hand. No one's ever doubted his ability. We also wanted, without Lewis having to bowl, we wanted another seamer in the team, and we felt that was the best way to do it. So, you know, if you had to put all the numbers on, many will say, well, they weren't going to do probably any worse than what we were doing from an opening point of view, with the stats that have been around the last 2-3 seasons. But there's a little bit more to it than just that, with the thinking and with the planning. So to win a 4-day game, you've got to get 20 wickets. That's the biggest point of difference you need. And then you've got to go and score one more run than the opposition. And we believe that we've got a batting unit, because we bat really deep too. You know, you've got someone like a Miguel Pretorius coming in at 9, who's been batting incredibly well for us. So we bat really deep, and we felt that it was the best makeup of the team to go out and win 4-day cricket games. And that's ultimately how we came to that decision. So very much a collective effort. And is it a long-term solution? Probably not. But in the short term and medium term, it's very effective.
Good stuff. Well, that leads on to Andy Cleave's question about talking about long term and your sort of views on Archie Vaughan's long term career. He's obviously struggled a little bit this early on in the season. I think the break came at a real good time for him, and then he's come back in the side, batting lower down the order, and has batted really well. What are your thoughts on Archie and where you see him sort of the rest of this season and going forward over the years?
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited about Archie. I think he's shown, the members and the supporters that he's certainly one for the future. He's got an incredibly high ceiling. He's got an incredible temperament, and all that's happened is he's gone through a bit of a rough patch, really, where confidence has taken a bit of a knock. And he probably needed a knock like he did at batting at 7, where he got that not out just to really get his confidence back up. I've seen it happen with a few players where they dropped into the middle order, and interestingly enough, he had to face a second new ball anyway. So it was nice to have a top order batter in that situation batting there. So incredibly excited about Archie. The thing that excites me most is just how he thinks about the game, how he sees the game. He seems very unflappable, even though he's probably gone through a bit of a rough patch with the bat. But he's someone that does want to bat at the top of the order, which again, I go back to that want to do it and the will to do it. He's certainly got that. And I see him back in the top order for a long period to come for Somerset and hopefully for higher honours. Is it going to be opening? Not sure. It could be certainly in the top 4, but he's definitely an option to go up the order again.
Great stuff. I know we're all looking forward to seeing him score buckets of runs for Somerset over the years. You mentioned that you're sort of having a rough time. Do you have kind of a set of? You almost kind of have to be like a bit of a psychologist then, as well as someone who knows the ins and outs of batting technique. I mean, do you have kind of a? Is that something you sort of studied independently as well as the sort of a technical coaching side of things to be able to help players when they're not feeling a bit down?
That's a good point you mentioned. You talk about one of the aspects you need to be a good coach is probably the psychology comes in huge into it. So again, to answer the previous question that you asked around coaching, I would encourage coaches to get into it. The psychology, understanding, how players think, how they manage themselves under pressure. And that's certainly something I'm not qualified to do, but I think the coaching and the experiences I've had and the experiences of having to deal with different situations and different players for a long period of time, you kind of understand the coping mechanisms of that. So you certainly become a psychologist, and I think the hairline will show you about all the conversations and the worries and everything you have to go through to be a coach. So yeah, psychology is massive. We're very fortunate to actually have a full-time psychologist now on board, which is a huge part of the game. So Emily has been with us from the start of the season, and I know that'll take a bit more time to kind of make an impact in the environment, although she has already. And but coaches are psychologists just purely by the nature of coaching.
Couple of questions from Alex. The first one he's mentioned about Matt Renshaw says his dad is a. Oh no, am I looking at the wrong question here?
Skills acquisition coach.
That's the one. Yeah. Did you notice anything different about how Matt Renshaw trained when he was here?
Oh, massively. It was actually fascinating to meet his dad. We were very fortunate to have a day where we sat down with Ian and actually just got into how his brain thought and why he did what he did. And it's very constraints-led coaching, which I truly believe has a massive place in the game. It is a different way of looking at training and coaching. A lot of the stuff we incorporate already into the training, but he spoke a lot about how adolescents and youths can really incorporate it to make sure that they developing correctly, and I was fascinated at some of the stuff he had to present. Matt was certainly someone that did train that little bit differently and required a few different things going into a game. An incredible problem solver, I'll call it that. So he had the ability to really get in and whatever he felt he needed to do at that time and kind of adapt quickly. That was his greatest strength as a player. Hence why he was an incredible performer for us.
Great stuff. Cider and Saints has asked, does Tom Lammerby command a place in the T20 side, and if so, who drops out? I'd like to just kind of modify that slightly, because I was just thinking back to that incredible knot that Lammers played against Gloucester in 2021, where he got 90 off for about 30 balls. And and he was falling over. He spent most of the time on his arse after having ramping the boulders over the keeper's head and all sorts. And it seemed to me like he just played with a hell of a lot of freedom. And now after the incredible knock he played up at Durham, which was, he spoke about wanting to be, spoke to you about wanting to be more ruthless. And not specifically talking about Lammers here, but do you feel in general that sometimes you have to sacrifice one part of your game to strengthen another part of your game?
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot to cover in terms of what Lammers has been through in terms of his journey. It happened quite quickly for him at a young age, burst onto the scene, showed incredible ability. The one thing you can never say about Lammers is it never looks ugly. It's always incredible to watch him bat. It always looks really pretty and easy on the eye. Lammers doesn't always see it that way, so that's where the psychology comes in, the ability to coach someone to get the best out of them, to utilise their strengths. And in that knock he played against Gloucester, he probably would tell you on his own, it was a very reactive knock, just kind of doing what felt comfortable and natural at the time. And when a batter gets into that sort of space, the flow or whatever you want to call it, that's the best place to be as a batter, because you're not having to think too much, you're just reacting. And I guess Lammers he's gone through an interesting journey. I really feel he's getting to that stage now where he's maturing in his game. The knock that he just played, the red ball knock in particular, was really pleasing to see him actually get the job done and finish not out. I guess his next mission is going to be to go and get a really big 100, go and do something that Tom Banton did probably early on in the year that he certainly has the ability to go and do. And then I guess in terms of his white ball game, there's nothing that he doesn't have to be successful in the white ball game. It's just about him believing it and going out and doing a little bit more often, like he did against Essex the other day. So really, really happy with the space that he's currently in, and I'm sure he'll take a lot of confidence with what he's done over the last month with his game. He's just got to go and believe it and go out and execute like he did the other day.
Absolutely. I don't see any reason why he can't do it. I think it's what's slowly, me looking externally, is what's happening with the batting group now is slowly but surely they are all being able to put on their CV that they have contributed to a big old Somerset run chase. Obviously Lammers, Abe's last year, James Rew spoke about he wanted to get a big 100, Lewis the other week against Sussex, so Craigo as well against Essex. So is it kind of important that there's that competition within the guys, like saying, oh, well, I chased 400, yeah, but were you chasing it away from home up at Durham? Do you know what I mean? That little bit of almost a ladder of the guys trying to get one up on each other.
Competition within a team is the greatest strength you can have, and it's an incredibly close group. Sometimes your greatest strength can also be your greatest weakness, though. We're we're incredibly close group and a very nice group, and maybe not often as ruthless as we need to be. We've spoken about the word ruthless on a number of occasions, and you've got to be incredibly ruthless to go out and win a county championship. You also have to be incredibly consistent as a team. So when it might not be the opener's day or the number 7 or 8's day, that's when other people have to stand up and go and do the job. And as you've mentioned, Ian, that's what the batting unit has done so far in this year. When we have really required it, we've stood up and we've made the most of it. So we don't live in a perfect world. It's never going to always be how the fans want to see it or even how we want to see it. So that's where you've got to hold your composure, and you've just got to believe that it's going to be someone's day to go out and win it. So yeah, we're getting better and better as a group. There's still loads of areas we can improve in, but I truly believe we're on the right track.
Great stuff. We've just ticked over to 8 o'clock. I've got a couple of little more questions. Ben, Dan, Pete, I've prattled on for long enough. Do you want to take over for the next couple of hours? Or have you got anything for Shane before we wrap up?
One of the things that fascinates me about the game of cricket, and this is an observation from being a chief executive actually as much as anything else, is that it requires you to play for yourself, but it requires you to play in partnerships, and then it requires you to play for the team as well. And being able to kind of pick your way through that, I guess everything you've said about Shane about kind of character and culture and building the group is is relevant here, and it's only a sort of T20 match, but on Sunday a succession of Essex batters came out, and they had Critchley on 50 not out at the other end, and I don't know what, they certainly weren't playing for him, and they probably weren't playing for the team, and they just took it in turns to hit the ball up in the air, and so that kind of game awareness of knowing when to play for yourself, when to play for the partnership. Michael Barber's very big on partnerships, isn't he? And we've now got an award as the club, the kind of partnership of the year. But it feels as a club like it's going really well when you've got two guys out there who are appreciating one another and the state of the game. And I'm not sure how you teach that, but yeah, it's just an observation, really.
No, definitely. There's so much strength in what you just said, Peter. The valuing the partnership is something we've spoken about a lot this year, and I think it goes over and beyond red ball cricket too. A partnership in white ball cricket can be as valuable as it can be in any other format. The thing about cricket is it never ceases to amaze me, because it's the most incredible game where there's so many other elements that come into play, and there's so many. It's such a conditions-based game. And I don't even know if there's another sport like it, really, where all these conditions and all the elements come into play, and it can make people do some really crazy things. It can make them do some incredible, wonderful things.
And the accountability is so obvious, isn't it? So, I mean, poor old Banton, he makes this fantastic 371, and then he has a couple of terrible decisions, but you don't see the terrible decision in the book. You just see a tiny score, and he might have got one of those decisions when he was on 1 or 2, instead of being able to make it to 371. So there's that kind of hazardous nature to all of this as well, which makes me kind of feel for them and feel for you, because however well you coach, at the end of the day you can get a bad ball or a bad decision, and all that work is out the window, and someone on Facebook will know how it should have been played.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm not sure if my audio went there a little bit, but it's also a classic case of when that batter might be in a poor run of form, that 50-50 decision, sometimes even more swayed the other way, goes against you. Quite a lot of our batters have found that too, but that's where eventually the luck turns, and I believe, if you're doing the right things, if you're putting enough work, and you're a good human being, I'm quite big on that, then that luck generally turns and goes the other way. So yeah, but spot on with what you said.
Great stuff. Dan, Ben, have you guys got any little posers for Shane before we wrap up?
That was amazing insight, actually. Really, really interesting to hear about that.
Yeah, nothing further to add, but yeah, no, really interesting, yeah.
Good stuff. There haven't been any questions from the listeners about the loan system, but I feel like we should just kind of briefly touch on that, because it has been a bit of a hot potato amongst the members over the last sort of few months. What's the process that you have when kind of identifying that the best course of action for a player is to go on loan rather than stay within the club and play for the seconds?
Yeah, I mean, from my side, I can completely understand when members get frustrated by seeing players going out on loan and thinking that they're not forming part of the plans. The way we see it as a group is any opportunity for a player to go out and get cricket, particularly in a pressured environment, whether that be for a different team in a different competition, whatever it might be. We see that as a real bonus. To allow that player to go in and put performances in, to feel what that pressure feels like. I just think, I look at Casey at the moment. He's getting the opportunity to play in the Blast in a good team. He's being surrounded by a couple of different coaches and players. He's getting insights into various different. He might even be thinking about the game differently, and all those experiences he gains, he gets to bring back with him. We're just lucky that I look at someone like Ben Green, who's been out on loan with Leicester. He's done an incredible job for them. We saw what it did to Lewis Goldsworthy a few years ago in the T20 comp, and now Lewis suddenly forms part of our team, and he's got a real role to play with us. So, everything's thought out, everything's planned. There's no sort of rogue decisions that just happen. A lot of this stuff is spoken about, and ultimately we want to do the best thing possible for the player, to give them the best possible opportunity to go out and perform. And unfortunately, as we will see with players now and players in the past, there will be players that leave, but there'll also be players that join. And it's just about getting the best 11 on the park whenever we can, and performing for Somerset. That's ultimately what it comes down to.
Good stuff. Just one final question, and a nice easy one for you. You don't have to name any names if you don't want to. But what's been the most satisfying experience you've had working with a player over your coaching career?
I guess the easy answer for me is just generally seeing a player do well. I think there's no better feeling for me than seeing a player achieving things they never thought they could maybe achieve, or maybe, going and doing something that, whether that's in a team environment, winning a trophy, winning a 4-day game, getting nearer than we ever have done before, whatever that might be. Just seeing people do well as a collective and as a group, individually, is ultimately why I do what I do. I remember even in the days that I played, I never got the satisfaction from doing it by myself. I got more satisfaction from actually seeing my teammates and seeing the team do really well. And that's, I guess, just kind of ingrained in my character. And I guess that's why I was always inclined to go into coaching, really. So, no, I've been very, very fortunate to see incredible places, see incredible things in the game, work with some incredible players and teams. And I don't think there's any moment that really stands out for me. I'm hoping there's still going to be many moments to come where I can look back and go, that was the big one.
Fantastic stuff. Well, hopefully that career highlight will come on the outfield at Chelmsford on whatever it is, the 23rd of September, or whatever it is, during that final game of the season. Shane Berger, Somerset Batting Coach, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Some great insights, as Ben said, into the world of coaching. And all the best for the rest of the Blast and the rest of the season. Looking forward to Hove on Friday. Everybody shaping up well. Do we know if Tom Banton will be released or not yet?
We're not sure. We're still waiting to find out. But as we saw, even if Lammers has to come in and do the job again, that'd be great. Good experience for him. But no, as far as we know, everybody's pulled through pretty well. Really excited about where the team's at the moment. Great to have Matt Henry and Riley Meredith as your two overseas pros. They have incredible impact into the environment, and really happy with the way we're batting at the moment. So no, we're in a good place as a team. And looking forward to going down to Sussex.
Brilliant stuff. Right, well, unfortunately I won't be able to make it down. It's my mum's 70th birthday, so if I did abandon dinner on on Friday night, my life would not be worth living. But I'm sure we'll bump into you at the County Ground or somewhere else sooner rather than later. Guys, thanks very much, and we'll catch up with you next time. If I stop recording.